Hello, everyone. We are happy to be discussing today about education and by how we empower girls around the world through education. And we have two people with us. One is Elizabeth Soes, who is a member of the board of directors and is heading the task force for empowering girls on behalf of Rotary International. And we have Jeff Adelaide, who is representing Global Partnership or Education, who are who have a partnership with Rotary for ensuring that we can educate the girls around the world. So this is going to be some interesting conversation. Uh, Let me set off by starting to ask Elizabeth. Elizabeth, Rotary is placing a major emphasis, as you are aware, that the president of Rotary International, Jeff, each year places a major emphasis. And this year, the emphasis that I have put on is Elizabeth, you are heading it around the world in the countries, wealthy countries. People probably do not even know that there are issues about educating girls around the world. We all live in our comfort zones. At times, we do not even know what the problems of others are. Uh, and nothing wrong because you are not exposed to that world. Not everybody is into the development world as you, me, or Jeff are. We got these opportunities to see what problems others face, but not everybody does. Can you tell our people, the viewers, what exactly are the issues and how are we handling it?
Yes, thank you, President Shekhar, and it's lovely to be here with you and Jeff this morning. And when the Rotary International Task Force was formed, we did look to our partners like the Global Partnership for Education, the World Bank, the UN and UNICEF and other agencies, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and others, and really looked at the statistics behind those challenges, and they are significant. Just in getting an education, for example, 9 in 10 girls globally complete their primary educations, but 3 in 4 girls complete lower secondary education. And an estimated 60 million girls globally have no access at all to basic education. It's a huge challenge for their personal development and the development of their communities and their economies. And menstrual hygiene is another major barrier. It doesn't seem like it should be, but it is a barrier to education. And globally, 500 million women and girls are estimated to lack adequate facilities for menstrual hygiene management. And that affects a girl's ability to go to school, stay in school. It results in absenteeism, lack of education attainment, and ultimately lack of economic opportunity. Many people in developed economies may not realize this, but child marriage is a worldwide issue. And 1 in 5 girls globally marries before her 18th birthday, some of them as young as 10, 11, and 12. That clearly affects the ability of a girl to get an education. And 12 million of these marriages happen annually. And girls are subjected to violence. And in many parts of the world, girls are unable to walk or ride a bike to school without experiencing some kind of gender violence. And some 60 million girls around the world face that challenge. And again, that water, hygiene, and education link is also a major issue. UNICEF estimates that women and girls, and mostly girls worldwide, spend 200 million hours a day. Yes, I said a day, fetching water. And when you are carrying water, you can't be in school. So the challenges are significant. And on the positive side, there is much that we can do within Rotary and with our partners, such as GPE, to resolve some of these issues.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's a deep insight into the big problem that we are facing. And the pandemic hasn't made things easier. It has, in fact, worsened the case, absolutely. Statistics show that by the United Nations, show that the situation has even got worse because of the pandemic. What are your views, Jeff, on this issue? how has the pandemic affected the entire matter?
Well, certainly, President Shekhar, the pandemic has seriously set things back. But maybe if I could just step back a bit, I think it's important to recognize that over the years there has been progress in girls' education. It just hasn't been enough. But you know, when I finished primary school myself in 1970, there were 1 in 4 children in the world were not in primary school. Today, that's less than 1 in 10, and the population has increased significantly. So that's a massive achievement. However, however, there are still hundreds of millions of kids who are not going to school. Today, the gender equality gap is a little narrower across the average, across the whole planet, but it continues to be a significant problem in the world's poorest countries. So we have out of school children that in 1990, 2/3 of the out of school children were girls. Today it's a half. So there's an improvement in girls' education, in gender parity, at least in access to education. But the issue is that the inequity of that is very obvious when you start digging a little deeper and seeing the difference between low-income countries and high-income countries. Girls face multiple barriers to education, as Elizabeth has just articulated very well. And I think that it's what I really want to say is how much we appreciate the partnership with Rotary and congratulate you on this initiative to focus on the empowerment of girls and women, because in itself, that will improve the outcomes for the next generation of girls. Because one of the things we know is that an educated girl becomes a mother who is much more likely to send her children to school than an uneducated mother. She's also, by the way, in the context of the current pandemic, much more likely to get her children immunized than an uneducated mother. The facts are very, very clear that the ripple effect of educating girls as the base for empowering girls, empowering women, hugely profound. Now, to your question on the COVID situation, it has certainly dramatically affected the prospects for girls. One estimate that we've seen lately is that up to 20 million girls may not go back to school after this pandemic, simply because while schools were closed, while they didn't have the opportunity to continue their education, other things got in the way. Other things like early marriage, the things that Elizabeth was mentioning, early marriage, perhaps violence, perhaps that with the economic downturn, the families are looking to falling back on old cultural norms and saying, okay, we've got to choose now. We can't send both our kids to school. We'll send the boy and not the girl. This is some of the unfortunate situations and barriers that girls still face. But the biggest problem, I think, with the pandemic has been that anytime you get such an impact like school closures, you affect the learning of children, and the gap between if you like, the haves and the have-nots is just widened. It's not just between countries, it's also within countries. So those kids that are less likely to go back to school following the pandemic when the schools reopened are going to be the kids from the poorest families, are going to be the most vulnerable kids, and that includes girls. So the great steps that we were making over the last few decades still had a long way to go, but the pandemic has just made it that much worse, that much more challenging, and really emboldened us to stand up and say, okay, we've got to do more.
Thanks, Jeff, for bringing out the perspective. The pandemic showed us there was loss of lives, loss of health, loss of income, and definitely learning loss, which has been huge for the younger people. It has been such a big problem that there has been a big setback. Elizabeth, you want to add something as to how the pandemic is going to affect the education of the girl child, especially?
Yes, and I think that, Shekhar, this is an example, as Jeff has pointed out, that not only affects countries with developing economies, it also affects countries with developed economies, in that the disruptions of education across the globe due to the pandemic meant that there was a real dependence on internet connectivity and access to internet, and also devices in order to continue education. And that affects, for those of our audience who are in developed countries, that also affects the children right in your own neighborhoods, but it affects children across the globe. And girls without those devices don't have an opportunity to continue. In addition, they may be the ones who are doing childcare, taking care of younger brothers and sisters, doing housework. If parents, due to a downturn in the economy because of COVID, if parents have to go out and look for more work, or sometimes those girls as well are just trying to find work to help their families as well. So yes, the COVID pandemic has definitely created those additional challenges for girls who are very strong and determined and want an education. But the circumstances are something that we can help them overcome.
So, Jeff, at Rotary, we strongly believe, and I'm sure you do too, educate a girl and you educate a family. It is so important that the girls are getting educated. So you'll be happy to know one of the initiatives Rotary took in India, for example, was that we provided to the government of India the entire curriculum from grade 1 to grade 12 in audiovisual format to be screened on national television on 12 different channels, which the government is now beaming the entire day. And it is content that has been totally developed by Rotary and is being shown every day to more than 100 million children.
Wow.
This was the best that could be done for children who are not able to go to school. So even during the pandemic, all of us have to find ways, find opportunities how we can ensure that the children get educated, and especially the girls. So Jeff, let me ask you, what is GPE doing to ensure gender equality in education?
Thanks for the question. Gender equality to us is at the very core. It's in our goal. It's not just to get kids into school. We see the real value of getting the kids into school, getting a quality education, and ensuring that this is happening in a gender equitable way. It is not normal, not natural that it wouldn't always be such, right? What we do see is in the lower grades these days, there is much more gender parity. But the further up the school years you travel, the less likely you are to see a female face sitting in the classroom compared to a male face. Elizabeth mentioned there's a stunningly outrageous dropout of schoolgirls when they get to menstruation age, simply because often of just not having the hygiene facilities at the school, not having separate girls' toilets. So a girl misses a few days of school, 4 days of school, she doesn't go back. You know, once you get out of that cycle, it's hard to crack back into it. So what is GPE doing? The first thing I'd say is the word gender, the notion of gender equality sits across absolutely everything we do. So from the first point of understanding what the problem is, in assisting developing countries with their education data systems, we encourage and insist that there is gender disaggregated data. You need to know how many girls are there and how many boys are there. But it's not just girls and boys, it's also the teaching workforce, right? Because we know there's a problem of access to education that we've been talking about just now. But there's also a huge issue about the quality of that education and the impact of that education. And one of the things we know is that to keep girls in school and for girls to successfully learn, the quality of their school experience can be affected by by the role models that they see in the classroom. Are they constantly with male teachers? That unfortunately continues to be the norm in many countries. And in particular, it can be the norm in the more difficult places to reach, so in the remote communities, because understandably, it might be harder for a woman to consider moving to a remote area to take up a teaching post because of all the associated issues that come with that. So it's a very complex web when you start looking at what GPE looks at, which is the education system. Our mission is to transform education systems, not just to get the female teaching workforce numbers up, not just to get the right role models in the textbooks and in the curricula, not just to ensure the that girls going to school will continue through beyond their menstruation cycle starting. All of those things matters, but it's the interconnectivity of all of those pieces that fundamentally will matter. And that's something that falls not just to your education minister, and not just to your school teacher or your school administrator, not just to the community, not just to the local businesses, but to everyone. You've got to get all of these pieces humming together. We've seen many instances where a terrific curriculum might be developed that is much more gender responsive than an old curriculum. But if you don't have the process of training and retraining the teachers in that new curriculum, it's not going to be worth it, right? So our approach at GPE, we talk about hardwiring gender into everything that we do. So right from the beginning of collecting the data and studying what the problem is, where are the bottlenecks, right there, you're looking at it from a gender perspective, and then all the way through in everything that you do, you cast a gender lens across those issues. And it may well be the case, and it is the case, that in some places it's boys who might be failing in particular areas. But the overwhelming evidence is that on average across the world, and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa and most of the low-income countries in the world, it is girls that are disproportionately affected, which is why putting this gender lens across everything you do is so important.
So well said, and that, Jeff, is the very reason why the focus this year itself is on empowering girls as far as Rotary is concerned. Elizabeth, tell us, what can Rotary Club members, as Jeff mentioned, everyone needs to do something. What can Rotary Club members do to make a difference?
Well, Shekhar, there is much that we can do in Rotary. And first and foremost, because we are people of action, we can take that kind of overview that Jeff has provided and through partnerships and within our communities as well as more globally, we can take action. And there are 4 ways that I would suggest that clubs can take action and that individuals, Rotary members, can take action. And the first of that way is to become an advocate for the girls of our world. And you can start by looking at the presidential initiatives page on My Rotary. It lists a number of resources that Rotary members and clubs can use in order to engage in empowering girls and start to take that community level action. Club members can also contact their district governor to connect with the Empowering Girls advocates for their districts. And those Empowering Girls advocates are appointed specifically. They are Rotary members with expertise, and they can provide information and ideas and connections to projects and project partners. So they can be very helpful to you in determining what kind of project your club wants to take on. And thirdly, definitely encourage your club, be the champion, and encourage your club to get involved in a project or adapt a project, as Jeff has said, through that gender lens. Conduct that project maybe that you already have in your club and do it through a gender lens. It's, to use his phrase again, which I love, it's hardwiring empowering girls into your projects, and reach out to non-governmental organizations, not-for-profits, organizations with expertise in these areas that are in your community or in your region, because they can be very helpful, and we are stronger together in partnership. And then finally, I would encourage every club to tell the story of your project and the impact of your project, and use the Empowering Girls campaign and Rotary Showcase to do that and to tell that story so that we can collect that information on impact. And you can also search for project ideas and project partners on Rotary Showcase. And these are no small things that we are doing. And as Jeff has provided us with that global overview, by supporting the girls of our world, those girls that we empower, they can change their lives. As Jeff has pointed out, they change their families' lives. They change their communities. And when we empower enough girls, they can even influence the economy of a country. So these are not small things. These are very big things, and they are totally appropriate things for Rotary People of Action to be doing.
And Jeff, I'm so happy to tell you that Elizabeth has developed a team of her around the world where not only the 19 board members and the 15 board of trustees, but there are more than 40 people approximately who are called the ambassadors for empowering girls. They have a team of nearly 200 people across the world who are passionate about this work, who work in tandem with more than 500 district governors around the world, who in turn ensure that this word reaches out to more than 36,000 Rotary clubs to 1.2 million Rotarians. So the network is good. People are passionate. It resonates, empowering girls. And the first thing when it comes to empowering girls is education. Because even if you are working on WASH, it leads to their education. You are working on their menstrual hygiene management, it leads to their education. When you fight against early marriage or teenage pregnancy, all of this is to ensure that the girl is educated, providing scholarships to her, etc. So many things are getting done. Jeff, which are the areas in the world where right now GPE is working? And let's tell the Rotarians who are tuned in to understand how we can partner, how GPE and Rotary can partner to ensure that we take this initiative forward.
Thank you. Well, GPE is currently working in 90 countries across the world. They are the lowest income countries. And in particular, we focus on the low income countries and those countries that are in a state of, shall we say, fragility or conflict, places where it's just that much more difficult to ensure the education of the girl child. We are thrilled to be partnering with Rotary in some very specific instances, and I'm talking here about national level partnerships, but you may be aware that at the moment in Ghana, in Zimbabwe, and in Kenya, the Rotary is in a partnership with us and some local businesses on what's called a girls' education awareness program. And this is a terrific partnership because it sort of demonstrates a little what we in GPE, in the Global Partnership for Education, are trying to do. It's our view that you're not going to solve any of these problems by leaving it to government. You're not going to solve the problems by leaving it to the marketplace. And frankly, community groups on their own aren't going to solve the problem. But you put them all together and you leverage the best skills of each element, and you've got a real opportunity. So what we've got in this Girls Education Awareness Program is the capacity to use the strength of Rotary's community connectivity with some key local businesses in those three countries I mentioned, Zimbabwe, Ghana, and Kenya, who excel in their marketing skills for their own businesses and their own products, and to apply those marketing skills with the assistance of the community level networks that Rotary has and the global impact that GPE has, put that all together and start really advocating at a community level, at a government and national level for the value of girls' education. It's a really thrilling partnership that we're involved in. I appreciate from what Elizabeth just said too that many of your Rotarians are involved in local community level activities. And I think that her answer there was just exactly right. Continue the activity that you're doing in the schools and put a gender lens on it. Think about it. Step back from it for a moment and just say, how might this affect girls or boys differently? And then the other thing I would say about working at the community level is go to the schools and talk to the teachers, talk to the school administrators, and try and understand what's the problem that is there in that local context, because it's all very different, right? In some places, it may be access to school. Girls who live a long way from school face maybe a threatening long walk to school. They don't want to walk home in the dark for an hour and a half. So an answer might be some mode of transport that can be arranged for them. In other places, it might be, as we've discussed before, a toilet block could make all the difference to retaining girls in that school. My point is, we can't sit here up in the north and say, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that. The situation will always be very different. And I think one of the great advantages of Rotary is that connection to the community. So use that connection and go in and talk to the school administrators, talk to the female teachers in that school, see what they think might be the best project that could be done at that sort of community level. And then please keep up the terrific work you do in your global advocacy and your national advocacy. I know amongst Rotarians there are many influential people. They have influential contacts. Keep this issue of girls' education on the political agenda, because whatever has to happen, we've got to keep our political leadership in all the countries, in all of the communities, focused on this terrific opportunity that sits before us, which is not just to give girls the right that they deserve to education, but to give families and communities and countries that opportunity that comes from having educated girls. It is life-changing, it is world-changing, it is the focus that we should have. I think it's you've got to be careful about looking for a silver bullet, but people talk about this as a silver bullet, right? It's the first step in the empowerment process that you are advocating for in Rotary. So again, thank you very much for the partnership with GPE. We really appreciate the work of Rotarians at a community level and yourselves at headquarters and in the national chapters. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And you're absolutely right that we need to keep talking at the highest level and work at the grassroots level. I was in different African countries, and each of the country heads that I met, whether it was the president of the country or the prime minister, I spoke to them about two things definitely. One was education during the times of pandemic and even beyond, and of course empowering girls. And it resonates so very well with them. The president of Ethiopia, she felt that, oh yes, I myself have been working for empowering girls. When I spoke to the president of Kenya, he was so excited that we will be working for empowering of girls. And I'm so happy that the Rotarians and GPE are coming together and doing some work in Kenya, Ghana, Zimbabwe. I'm sure these pilots will ensure us to go to other places. To Rotarians, there is so much that can be done. Elizabeth had mentioned, let me just sum that up again, menstrual hygiene management, a big difference it can make to ensure that girls keep going to school. Ensuring gender segregated adequate toilets in schools, that will ensure that the girls do not drop out. And if at all they drop out, can we ensure scholarships to them so that they can too go to school? Because as Jeff mentioned, post the pandemic, the economies have shrunk for people. They have lesser money, and if they have two children, it will normally be the boy who will be sent to the school and not the girl.
Yes.
That is where we have to ensure that the girl too gets an opportunity to go to school. And when she is going to school, she needs to be safe. How about providing them bicycles, maybe solar lanterns, so that they feel safe while coming, going, whatever. So there is a lot that can be done in different parts of the world. We can do different things. Thank you very much to you, Elizabeth, for the work that you are doing in steering the Empowering Girls initiative, which focuses so much on education. And thank you, Jeff, for the wonderful work that GPE, Global Partnership for Education, is doing. And I'm so happy that in between am I, who is ensuring that there is a partnership between these two organizations, and we ensure that every girl gets equal opportunity. I always say girls are half the humanity, they should have half the opportunity. Thank you very much for being in this session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.